The Mirage of Me and My Cast of Characters, Chapter 1. This morning as I woke up and I picked up this device to record a little bit more into this multi-dimensional autobiography, for lack of better terms, this pure consciousness rushes right in. It's like a celebration that every note is getting sung here, and no one's doing any of it. I love speaking to how what we refer to in the human realm as synchronicities or special moments seem to arise to support whatever we seem to be doing. And I think where that really gets profound and beautiful is when we start to recognize that all of this, every bit of this, is for the me. And not only that, but all of this, every bit of this, has been cultivated with, by, and for that which we refer to as myself. Going back to the moment that we all seem to enter into these vessels or meat suits or whatever you want to call them, avatars, this incarnation. We've all had the experience of connecting with an infant baby and looking into their eyes. And I've even heard others say the same thing I've heard come out of Kelly's mouth. Oh my goodness, I'm there again. The eyes have opened, and I look like this vulnerable little infant that knows really nothing, and I'm helpless and at the mercy of everyone. But that couldn't be further from the truth. You see, the moment the eyes open in this vessel and we appear as that little tiny infant, we are still very much aware of our connection to this fullness, richness, boundless aliveness we call God, we call universe, we call spirit or source, whatever you refer to it as. That infant is so profoundly still connected. They're not fearful. Don't give them that energy. Don't feed that into their story. Poor you. Oh my gosh, what did you sign up for? You have no idea what's ahead. I hear people say these things around little infants and toddlers. I don't try to correct anyone anymore. I don't try to teach that moment. I see that moment as my invitation that there's still some confusion here. And that's what I meet with love. So entering into that with the knowing that this one we call Kelly was born on March 3rd, 1968 to Kevin and Charlene and her sister and her family, just as any other infant, raw, new, unfamiliar, yet knowing all. There is immediately the storytelling that begins. The first story, and it's a girl. Smack on the bottom and the tears come. The wailing starts. She takes her first breath. And the doctors tell Charlene and Kevin, that was a close one. She was a blue baby. The cord was wrapped around her neck. And in 1968, in a Navy hospital, that was a close one. Unlike her sister, her father was actually present for her birth. Being in the Navy, he was often gone, and so to have him sitting there was a joyous moment, but it was also one of a little bit of disappointment. You see, Kevin and Charlene were expecting a boy. Michael Scott was to be his name. And so although Kelly was picked up and loved and held and adored and bounced and treated with all of these delicious moments that infants often are, there was also a palpable disappointment that my father later admitted to, as did my mother. Those come much later in life. Unfortunately, Kelly carried that burden of not being the one that they wanted, because they did share that story with her, but in humor. And there was always this running joke that you were meant to be Michael Scott, and we would have one of each. There was this unconscious thing that happens in that story. It even plays out in our family photos. The sister was always dressed in the adorable little pink romper, and sitting right beside her was little Kelly in the little blue romper. The sister was always gifted and afforded to have her hair long and luxurious, and little Kelly's hair was often cropped into short cuts, short bangs. There were times where it was long, but often those were short and in between, as Charlene, being a beautician, would once again take to her magical work of giving Kelly a page boy or some short haircut. So these stories set in. Stories of not being enoughness, not being worthy right from birth. No one's fault. No right or wrong in any of this. In the Mirage, these are the cast of characters. These are the ones that began to set in at a very, very early age. It carried out to the characters that Kelly became, because each of those then created a way to be worthy, to be enoughness, to be noticed, to be heard, to be seen. So all of those viable characters arose from that one seed. And that's how incredible this thing goes. The harvests that we create through these thought patterns that aren't ours, that we never pause long enough to look at, to notice how absolutely hysterical they really are. Now, no babies were harmed in the making of this story. Please know that, at least not intentionally. This little one, she was adored. She was loved. She was wanted. She was appreciated. Bounced on knees, giggling, laughing, finding peace and harmony in this expression of life. And even in all of this, even in all of these expressions, these things that we call moments of suffering, or moments of detachment, or moments of not being enoughness, can be met right as they arise. Of course, not as an infant. and perhaps not as a 3-year-old or a 5-year-old, or as the story gets to continue. But what we will see as we share this multidimensional autobiography is how many invitations arise in any given moment for each of us, which is God's love and the light of that love which we are a part of that continuously shows up. We may not be present enough for it yet, but it has never left us. And in the expression of this incarnation, we may feel as though we've left it or been detached from it, but that has also never been true. The wonder of the expression of this boundless aliveness that we're all a part of is in understanding that none of this is happening to us, and all of it is happening for us. Again, I recognize it may not feel like that at the time. There is nothing here that's saying I would not be empathetic or sympathetic or absolutely loving to someone who is in need of compassion for some horrendous, unsettling things that they may have gone through. My sharing of my story is not to unravel yours. That is for you to do, the one listening to this now. You can't go back any more than I can and rewrite that moment. But as I sit here this morning and I share about it, there's no longer a suffering story of woe with me. I was not wanted as a girl. I was wanted as a boy. Woe with me that I didn't fulfill that desire for my parents. Poor little me who got dressed like a little soldier boy instead of a cute little Barbie. All of it becomes hilarious. And that's because there's nothing here that sees that it could have gone any other way than that way. Each of those moments expressing themselves were pivotal spaces where this story of Kelly began to know herself more through all the expressions of that which I am not. I am not forgotten. I am not unworthy. I have never been cast aside. I have never been neglected. All of those things that appear to have arisen here have been stories for me to investigate. And for 57 years, apparently, that's what I've been doing. Now, I was born to two pretty incredible beings that I would call very open and somewhat liberal in the fact that although they were Catholic, and although I was raised Catholic, there was always an openness and a willingness from the time I was little to celebrate everything. Different diversities, different cultures, religions, ethnicities and foods, cultural stimulations, reading, music. My parents were very open. Part of that, of course, was their own upbringings and seeming stories that they brought to the forefront, and not wanting to repeat some of those ancestral traits in their own parenting styles. And I'm grateful for that. I really am. I now find so many gratitudes and spaces where I get to honor and thank my parents, even in the ways where they seem to have let me down. For I now know that all of those have created the power and the strength of who I've become. Each time I meet a story with the incredible resilience of seeing what it's done and how it's forged away ancestral or otherwise for my own child in my non-need to repeat that pattern, there's a celebration that says, and that is why we do what we do. We, this collaboration, this pure consciousness, this awareness, this endless bliss of which I am a part. This is why we do this. It's not a classroom. You're not here to learn your infinite knowledge. But everything you store, every collective memory that you attach to or that you cling to or resist is taking up space to remember your truth. And in this multidimensional autobiography, softening of those you will find is what afforded space to see what is really here. That none of those collective thoughts are true. Not one of them. I've never been a male or a female. I've never been this thing that I now know as a body. But we'll get to that. I promise. That is a development that's taken this thing that we call time, which also is untrue. There's so much to cover in these chapters of the Mirage of Me and my cast of characters. And as I mentioned in the opening and the intro, this is my journey. I'm not sharing this to shift anyone else's perspectives. I know that if that happens, that is intended to be the way of it and not because of anything I've done or said. This little bluebird still has a song to sing, and it will be sung. And it comes through when she awakens, often at 3 in the morning, often at 3:33 in the morning actually, and meets this beautifully as it comes through. The sharing in my own voice, in my own words, in these collection of thoughts, it's for no one else. But if it assists you in your journey, I'm happy to continue to share. And if this resonates for you in some way, you'll know why. It'll reach a place within you that says, that makes so much sense today. That aligns here. It sits in my heart and it opens something up that's willing to hear it. These things we call parents and family, community, each of them are serving their purpose. But don't ever lose sight. Don't ever lose sight that they are separate from you. You are nothing more than stardust, atoms and molecules. This is scientific. This isn't woo-woo. You are a collection of vibrating energies seeming to have your own unique story. But that's a limited version of who you are. This expression of grandness, so miraculous and great that the fear to know thyself fully can often create a veil to understanding this experientially. But each of us, every single one of us, seeming separate on this journey, gets to experience that awareness. That is one thing I can assure you. and we will cover that further down the line. Much love. Until next time.